Real quick, I have two videos going. I've tried this in the past where I've tried Facebook and Instagram together. Wasn't super successful, but I want to try it again because I just don't have the time to do it on both mediums. And I have requests on Instagram to show some things as well. So welcome Facebook and Instagram. Happy Friday. I hope everybody's doing awesome. In Buffalo, New York, it is snowing, so it's really, really cold and snowy, but it's kind of pretty, so I don't mind too much. I got my Tim Hortons, my Timmy Hose. I had to take my son out to school this morning for all-county practice. There's the Solo Fest or the all-county concert is tomorrow, and I had to take my husband to work because we are down to one car. One car in the winter stinks. Oh well, what are you gonna do? So today I am talking about portrait drawing and graphite. And what I wanted to show you guys was actually kind of the ugly stage, because a lot of times as artists, we don't show people the ugly stage. And I think when we don't do that, it's really difficult for new artists starting out to work through that ugly stage, because all they ever see are these beautiful drawings that are put up right after we've completed them. And it makes it really difficult for them to understand that we struggle, we go through issues with our drawings as well. We go through stages that aren't so pretty. So I think when we are as more seasoned artists, we should share that so that they don't feel so defeated. Don't mind my dogs. So that's what I wanted to do today. I am actually working on this beautiful lady. Look at this lady. I am honored to be drawing her. So I'll show you her. Isn't she gorgeous, you guys? Look at this. Beautiful. So I am drawing her. Now, how do I start that? I start my drawings by doing the rough sketch, which she's already approved. And then what I do is I usually do my rough sketches when I'm doing a portrait from a photograph. I'll use the grid method. I'll show that another day, but I do it on some other paper, trace paper typically, so that if I have things to work out, I can. And then I take the trace paper and I transfer it onto my grid paper, which I'll show you in just a minute. So when I transfer it onto my grid paper, I'm just transferring kind of guidelines on so that I know where my shadows and my highlights are, because that's really all I need to know. And the reason why I mentioned this is I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he said, hey, I noticed that you had your dog drawings out, and when I saw it on Facebook, I saw just kind of like these rough lines. Is that how you work? And I said, yes, actually, those are just guides. They're just there to help me remember where the highlights and the lowlights are, and I just kind of fill everything in. I kind of color the portrait in then from those guidelines. So that's kind of how I start. And this morning, I just started to do some rough kind of blocking in real quick of some highlights and some shadows. And I'm not going to keep you guys too long, but I am going to show you kind of what I do. As far as like getting started. When I am initially starting this process, I don't use a pencil. I typically use, they're makeup applicators. They're eyeshadow sticks. So I use these to add my charcoal. I start with charcoal and I use graphite on top of charcoal. So I start with a charcoal base. The reason why I do that is it's incredibly hard to put charcoal over graphite. Graphite has a sheen to it. Even if you do really light layers, it's going to actually start to build up. You're actually like burnishing the graphite as you layer over it. So it gets slippery, it gets a sheen. So once that happens, it's hard to put charcoal over the graphite. So I always do my charcoal base first. So I'm working right now with my charcoal. I'm using a 2B charcoal pencil, but I'm not really using the pencil on my drawing. I'm putting it like on a piece of scrap paper. So I'll show you. I'm taking my scrap paper. I'm going to show you both. And I am putting charcoal down on the scrap, almost like a painting well, right? So if I do watercolor. So what I'm doing basically is getting my mixture ready to use my paintbrush or my applicator and dip into it so that I can apply it to my paper. So I do that. I create my little, well, I do this with graphite as well. I kind of use my pencils last. Those are like for my details. So I get my pencils out when I want to do really fine hairs and things like that. So I get my well of color set up. So I'll set that to the side. I always have my handy dandy kneaded eraser, which is an artist's best friend. These are so cool. You can pull them apart to clean them. So when they get really gunky, you pull it apart and it turns white again. It cleans all the, I don't know where the graphite goes. It's like magic. Just disappears off into somewhere. But so you can get it kind of gunky and then pull on it and it gets nice and clean again. And I use this a lot to lift lots of highlights, or if I feel like I got too much color on something, I can just blot down on my paper and lift some graphite without taking everything off. So those are my tools to start. I got my makeup applicator, my kneaded eraser, and then I do use paint brushes in the beginning. So these are used for larger areas, typically backgrounds. I do use them on the forehead, chin, neck areas. So I use these two tools really just to start. And that's how I kind of block everything in. And I use different size paint brushes for different areas, so if I need them. But the biggest one is using my applicators. So I'm going to drop you guys down so you can actually see what I'm working on. The other thing I do is, and this I got from J.D. Hillberry. He's an amazing graphite charcoal artist. I took a couple workshops with him, and they were really so much information. He taught me so much. That's where I learned how to use the makeup applicators. Before that, I was strictly using paintbrushes. But he also taught me this. You take a little sheet of paper, a little piece of scrap, and you put a little piece of tape on it. And what you do is you lay your hand over the scrap paper, and it sticks to you. And this way, as you're drawing and you're setting your hand down, you're not getting oils or anything on your drawing. So it's very important. I also do have just a regular piece of scrap paper I keep over the drawing to help keep it clean. But sometimes, especially if I'm working on a large drawing and I move my hand up on the drawing, I forget to move this little piece of paper, and I take a chance on getting something oil or maybe charcoal on my drawing. So I have this, but this is awesome. So let me bring you guys down here so you can see the drawing. And I'm just going to do a little quick demo. I hope you can see it. Let's see. Let me get this one first. So you should be able to see what I'm working on here. I'm hoping. Let me move away from the light a little bit. That might help so it focuses better. There we go. I think you can see that now. So you can kind of see the drawing I have done of her. I hope that works. Okay, I think that should be good. And then you guys, all these things I'm doing, you guys should be able to see it too. If I pull this down over here. Let me bring this over. These little crazy wacky things that I'm doing so you can see what I'm working on. Okay, I think you guys can all see that. And then let me throw a light on. Help out a little bit here. Okay, so here is where she's drawn. And you can see I started to block in some of the background. And the reason why I did that, and this is very rough to begin, because all I need to do, I need the background in as a guide to see where she's blonde. So I want to see where her hair is. So without the background, I'm working blonde hair against a light background, and I can't see all those fine little detailed hairs. So I just wanted to rough some in to get so that I can see that. So you can see this is kind of where the back is, the top of her head. Move you guys up a little bit. And then I'm able to see that this is where that blonde is. So right now I don't have to worry anything about the blonde, but I'm just trying to get some of these darker shadows in that are at the roots. Even blondes have color. They have different tones and stuff in their hair. So we have to represent that when we're working in grays and grayscale, we still need to represent all those tones, even though she has very light colored hair. So you will see spots that are very, very dark because that's where the shadow is. So basically what I do is I take my little well of paint here, my charcoal, it's a number 2 I've put on here. I get it on my applicator and I just start putting in these spots where I know, go this way, where I know it's darker, where there's dark shadow. I gotta lift, hang on, I need to see my reference photo. There we go. So I started to block it in a little, but see now I'm starting to make it darker, okay? So I'm adding some more shadows here onto the real close to where the roots are because that's where it's the darkest. As I work up the hair later on, as I'm fine-tuning it with my pencils, I'll start to add the little different hairs and the tones in, and some of the different midtones and things up here. But right now I'm just kind of keeping it blonde. I'm focusing mostly on the really dark areas. So I just keep dipping into my little paint well here, and I just keep adding these strokes in. So not the prettiest, but you can kind of see how it really quickly adds color without having to use that tiny little pencil lead. And, you know, it saves time. It really, really saves time. So I'm able to work, this is a pretty dark shadow in here, and I'm able to start getting some of this in. And as you work this, it gets softer and smoother and more fine-tuned as you go. So it starts off pretty rough, but I hope you guys can see. But as you work this down, and then you can use the edge of the applicator too, so you can get a smaller line. But as you use this, it just keeps adding some tones on it very quickly. And see? Just like that. And I can kind of keep spots in between. I know that these are going to be much brighter. So rather than just coloring it all in, I'm going to keep the color of the paper, the white, the cream, and work around it. And later I'll use my eraser. I have some fine, real small erasers that pull out real small hairs and stuff. So I'll go in and clean these up and kind of create the highlights, the hair highlights. So basically, not super pretty in the beginning, very, very rough, but super, super easy, fast way to get a lot of pigment on your paper without struggling with the pencil. And like I said, you go back in later and you can fine tune it. Down here, like right in this area here, right here, it's pretty dark and it comes out from the shadow, and as this hair bends towards the light, it gets lighter. So I know that I can add some pretty dark shadows in here quickly, just like that. As I come out, I'm lifting the applicator so I don't get I call it a grungy edge, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I always start in the dark and work my way out. And I can just keep applying this until I get it to where I want it. It's not going to get super, super dark to the point where I want it with this applicator. I will have to go in with my charcoal pencil at some point and add some, I'll show you. So eventually I will go in with this after I build this up. And that's when I'll really start to add some darker color. The shadows, because this is all in darkness here. And then this is where I start to really fine tune it as well, which we're still in the early stages. I wouldn't usually be doing this, but you can see how that gets it nice and dark, and it will start to recess it back as like a shadow. So, and then as I come forward, it gets lighter. I do her whole face, everything with the applicator first. I always get my boundaries in where I want things. So now you can see that that's darker. This is also a tool that you can use to lift color. So if this were clean, I can flip it to a cleaner edge, like this edge right here. It's got a little bit of charcoal. I can actually clean it on some paper, but I can go against the grain, against my mid-tone and my shadow, because this is highlighted, and lift. And you can see how that's taking some of that charcoal off and creating a nice soft gradient in there. And basically you would do this back and forth over and over until you get what, you know, the softness that you want and the gradient that you want. So let me show you what I was saying about lifting it up when you're coming in and out of the shadows. If you don't lift it, and you've got this, we'll do it on this here, and you've got this sheet of paper, and this is like your face, right? You just keep it down on the ground and go back and forth and like try to like put an area in of color, even if it's the background. Do you see where you have a start and a stop? You don't want that because it's hard to get rid of that. And then in the middle, it's lighter. So if you constantly get in the habit of doing this stroke, you always start in the dark and you have the darker end here and you lift and it goes to a nice soft gradient. You lift right off the paper. It's with pencils too when you're drawing, like when you're sketching and stuff. So if you get in the habit of doing that, you won't have that grungy stop area. So if, like, you're on a cheek area and you're next to the hair, like here's the hair. This is very rough, right? So say this is it. And you want it soft and the light's hitting over here. You start in the dark area and you curve it and work your way around the cheek. But notice how I'm always going back in the dark, laying down my tool and lifting to the light so that I get that nice soft gradient. If I didn't do that, I would have this. I would have that, which becomes blotchy and ugly. And this is where people get really frustrated. They forget to lift the tool. So anyway, that's kind of where I start my drawings. So like if I were to work right in here quick, I already have charcoal on this. It's a lighter area. I don't actually need to go in and add charcoal to this tool. I can just go right in here and start to add some mid-tone to it, and it's a highlighted area, but it does have a tone on it. So I can go ahead and get some of that white of the paper knocked back just by, I know it's hard, it doesn't look like I'm lifting this, but I am. But just by putting some of the tone that some of the charcoal I already have on this tool, I can knock that white back. So if I want to go ahead and dip in again, like I feel like there's not enough on there, I go ahead and dip it in. And then what I would do is just hit this a couple times on the paper to lighten it up. And then I can go back in, and right in here, like right in here is darker than some of these others. So I can add that. I can go ahead and add this one like this. And I'm starting back here because it's slightly darker back here and it's lighter as we get to her forehead. So if I want to connect these, I can use the side and pull this just like that. So it's just kind of there. So I'm softening it, but I don't want to just color this whole thing because there are quite a few highlights in her hair in here. So just to make it easier on myself with the eraser later, I don't have to put a whole bunch of dark in there. So that's pretty much it, you guys. You can see I started the forehead. Now with the paintbrush, what I love about the paintbrush is I can take my paintbrush in here. Move this over. Getting kind of a shadow here. Sorry about that. So I could take my paintbrush and kind of swirl around in here, just circles, and kind of soften some of those edges that came in from my tool. And I can soften this forehead area. And then I can go back with my tool and this takes several layers. So it's not just okay, there's the layer for the forehead and we're all done. It takes a lot of layers that I do this in. So I've got that. Then if I feel like this area got a little too dark, and I am absolutely jumping the gun here just to show you, I don't feel it's too dark, but say I get done and I feel like it is, I can take my eraser and blot and lift some of that and just kind of lift that color off so that I create a nice highlight there. Again, it's going to be hard to see because I didn't have a lot on there to begin with. Then I take my paintbrush again, and I can just go in and soften it again around the edges so I don't have like a circle. I don't want to create a circle. I want a nice soft gradient. So I want it to go from dark over here and lift lighter in the center. So then I would go back to my tool. Like right in here, this is very dark. So I could start adding that, and I'm lifting up. So I've got this. Just like that. So I start to work on this edge. I know, it does not look pretty. It's not going to. It's not going to for a little bit. It starts to really look pretty when I start to get the pencil in there with some of the strokes and soften it. This is just kind of blocking in where I'm going. So it gets lighter as we come out. So I always want to start in the dark and lift towards the lighter. And I always try to go the way the bone structure is. So we know that the forehead's curved, so I want to kind of curve my strokes. I don't want to just make them straight like that. So I'm curving kind of around the forehead. So, like that. Okay? Then I could come in, I could even come in with a smaller brush if I want and soften. Soften all this up. If I feel like I got a spot that's just too dark, I would, or I've gone too far with it, I use my little eraser and I just blot it up, and then that lightens it without, I don't want to just erase it. I don't want to damage the paper for one, and I'm trying to create smooth skin. This is a young, beautiful lady, so no blemishes. She's just got this beautiful skin, and that's what I want to create, is that soft skin. So it's work. It takes time. I hope, hello. I hope that helps you guys a little bit. If you have questions, feel free, please. Don't hesitate to ask. Just trying to get you guys back in place here. I don't mind helping out at all. I'm going to go back. I'm going to jump off of here, and I'm going to go back to drawing my beautiful lady here. Her name is Kristen. So maybe she was watching. Maybe she'll enjoy seeing herself being created on paper. All right, guys, have a great day. Oh, you know what I wanted to mention quick is I will be in Derby, New York this weekend. I know that's far and we're having a storm, but if you happen to be in the area, there is a craft show. I want to say Or Drive or something like that. I'll have to look up the address and post it in my comments. I'm not sure. But I'm going to have my brush babies there. I'm going to be selling my boxes, paint in a box, paint with a box. I've got Haley the Hedgehog, Toby the Giraffe, and Baby Deer Rain all ready and available to go. If you'd like, you can buy them on my website too, www.brushbabies.com. Lots and lots of fun. I do a video and walk you through the whole process, watercolor process, from start to finish. Just a little 5x7 you can paint. Really, really adorable. Great little gifts to frame and give to friends and relatives or keep for yourself. Or on back, I sometimes use them as cards. So I'll write notes on the back and give them away for birthday cards, note cards, things like that. I am releasing next week. I released last week my Solitary Soul watercolor gentleman, my old man. They are limited edition prints. 30 are only 30 available. That's it. Once 30 are sold, there will be no more made of him. And next week, I'll be releasing the other old man to that edition. He is the storyteller. So he will be available next week to purchase limited edition prints as well, only 30 available. I think that's it. So everybody have a fantastic Friday. Hope this was helpful, and I'll see you sometime during the week. Bye-bye.